Hey, how you doing? You want to see something cool? Come with me. Just kidding. Okay, so I interviewed the co-founders of Butter by the Dozen, Halim Atallah and Asma Jabri. They founded a bakery a few months ago. It won an award. Super cool stuff. We bake, we have fun. This is part one. This is the interview. This is the questions. We filmed it after the bakery. That's why it starts with Asma saying that was super fun. We're going to release part two soon. Enjoy it. Enjoy the conversation. And then soon after, you'll see us fumble around while I put my headphones on and they comment on my baking, all the mistakes I'm making and what comes out of that. So what's supposed to be lemon blueberry cookies, but it's kind of something different comes out. Enjoy it.
That was really fun. And honestly, I think it got us like warmed up instead of having to like jump into the conversation right away.
I would love to talk about that after.
Absolutely.
Like podcast experience, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's my first, obviously.
Well, that's a pleasure for me, actually. So from my side, like, I'd really like to get into the butter journey. From your standpoint, both of you as co-founders and as people who kind of take care of it. But first, I would start with like, in general, say you're meeting somebody for the first time, and you're just giving them like an elevator pitch. What's your favorite way to say this is Butter by the Dozen?
Cool. Okay, so at Butter by the Dozen, we currently specialize in cookies, but there's a lot more products that I'd like to add in the pipeline, hence the name Butter, which encompasses lots of potential desserts. But we started off with cookies because I'm obsessed with cookies, but I couldn't quite find what I like in a cookie here in Dubai. So I started to develop a few recipes here and there, and why butter is, in my opinion, obviously my favorite is because I think I nailed the balance between sweet and not too sweet. When I developed the recipe, actually, I did so many tries where I would like decrease the sugar, decrease up until it was no longer a cookie and it was something completely different. And then I added a little bit. So what you ended up with was like the cookie that you want. So it's crispy on the outside, gooey on the inside, but it's not overly sweet. You get to actually enjoy the cookie dough, but then we also use Valrhona chocolate in our cookies. And I get this question a lot, like what's Valrhona? So Valrhona is a very high, like premium quality chocolate. And what we do is we chop it and incorporate it into our doughs. What you end up getting is puddles of chocolate in your cookie. So just all together, that's already like so good. But then I always add a teeny bit of salt, and that's why my tagline is salt-kissed artisanal cookies. I put sea salt on all my cookies because I think that it will definitely help the cookies shine, but at the same time, like avoid it being overly sweet. And I think it just elevates the flavor altogether.
I love that story. I love that it's kind of 3 layers from what I can tell. The layer that's the dough, the layer that's the chocolate, and then the layer that's maybe what we would call the garnish.
Absolutely, the cherry on top.
I love that, because I'm here, I mean, now I'm not here, I'm in Saudi, but I've been here for years, and I've also tried a bunch of cookies, and a common theme, which I think we can all say with everyone accepting, even the businesses themselves, is that the dough is sweet. We don't get a complex flavor.
Right, absolutely.
What's the secret, well, if you'd be willing to share it with us, of why, when you said taste the dough, what's the secret of why we taste the dough? What is the taste?
Right. So again, when I developed the recipe, I wanted to make sure that like the full 360 experience of the product was top notch. Sometimes you taste the cookie and you're like, I like the dough, I don't like the chocolate, or I like the chocolate and I don't like the dough. I wanted to make sure that I got it all. And so what we do is we brown our butter. And essentially, so there are secrets in the name, actually. We brown our butter, but then there's a few steps with that I'll keep to us. But essentially, when you brown your butter, you're caramelizing the milk solids in the butter, and that it basically just elevates the cookie dough. Like even when you're browning butter, you can smell the caramel coming out of it. So it just gives your cookie, like, as you said, a more complex flavor, a caramelized flavor, especially when you bake it in the oven. It makes all that much of a difference in the color and the texture and like the crisp outside, gooey inside. Like, it does really play a role, and it definitely elevates the product. Aside from that as well, just to add, I'm sidetracking a little bit, or I'm backtracking, is other than my main pitch will always be that it's not too sweet. And some might disagree with me. They're like, but it's dessert. Like, I mean, I like it to be sweet, and that's totally fine. And it's all about taste, right? But for me, I don't like to be overwhelmed by the sweetness, because that's going to take away from the dessert itself, right? But the other thing as well is...
Desserts aren't just sugar.
Absolutely. There are so many different things that you want to be able to taste and appreciate, but you can't when it's overwhelmingly sweet, and you can't have as much as you'd like, right? So I'm someone who loves to snack, and I'm also someone who loves to like make desserts or take desserts to gatherings, and I think that's very popular here in Dubai. So the other pitch that I might give, but that's a secondary pitch to the flavor, is that our cookies are smaller in size, and that's why we sell them by the dozen. So if you're alone, you can order like our smaller box, and you can enjoy a few on the spot, or maybe save some for the next few days. They keep really well in the boxes. But then if you're taking them to a gathering, we have our gathering box, and you don't have to be like, oh, I'm going to take half, or I'm going to take a quarter, or let's get a knife and let's cut it and let's do that. Everyone gets a cookie.
And we do that in like our gatherings, where we'll share things because they're too big, and there's a lot of desserts.
I wanted that side, and I want the middle, and I want the crisp, and
To be fair, before we started, they used to be a lot bigger, and then we realized people kept cutting them in half.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But then they end up coming back.
Yeah, exactly. So, people kept coming back.
I was actually going to ask Halim, like in the beginning of the process, when they were bigger, did you ever think that they would be smaller when you started playing with that idea? Were you on board?
To be honest, no. I never really thought about the whole size thing initially. But yeah, we realized every time we would bake, people would break it in half, eat that half, go to another cookie, eat that other half, and then come back and grab the other one, thinking that they're willing to share with a bunch of people, right? And the thing is, for me, I cannot eat a cookie or a dessert in general that's very rich. And I just have that, what do I call it? Chocolate overdose or something like that, right?
Yeah, like he has a cap.
I have a cap.
I don't. I'm
So
a sweet tooth.
Capless.
Yeah. But with butter in general, there's no cap for me, because I don't feel like it's as sweet as the other ones that are very rich, right?
Yeah,
so
the
I actually
focus is the texture, the caramel.
There's always something to it, right? So the fact that we break the chocolate into multiple pieces, and you might get some more here versus the other one, it's kind of balanced out, right? And the sea salt on the top, perfect.
I love that. For the both of you, maybe starting with Halim, and then we'll go back to Asma. Emotionally, when you're thinking about, first, even before butter is butter, I want to make cookies. I know that started with Asma, of course, but when Asma said, I want to make cookies and I want to try it out as a business, for you, emotionally, what was going on for you? What did that feel like?
So I was super excited. I'm not the typical person that would... Wait, let me restart this, because I was going to say something else. I was just going to say, so I was super excited when I found out about butter. So the thing is, when Asma created the recipe at the time, Asma was not working back then. So she was taking like a break from work, right? And that break was to figure out what she really wanted to do. If that was butter, if that was anything else, right? And it just so happened she created this amazing recipe, and I was like, wow, this is really good. And we need people to really taste this. So for me, I was very excited. I think very simple answer is I was ready to go forward before yesterday, if anything, right? And the fact that we had a product that was great and lots of support from friends and family, which was amazing as well, really was a good sign for us to proceed further with that. She didn't have a job yet, so I was like, listen, no job. You're not planning to get a job soon, but if this turns into something, why not, right?
The key fits in the keyhole in this case.
So we're like, let's try. Let's give it a shot. And I've been very supportive from the very beginning because I love it.
Did you have any uncertainty?
Not at all. There are times where you have something happening and you're not too sure if it's going to happen or not, if it's going to work in the way. Look, I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the food business, right? You're going to have days where you have orders that are that high, you're going to have days that are orders are that low. You want to compare it week on week. Well, last Wednesday, we got, let's say, 50 orders. This Wednesday, we got 30 orders. Why? So, well, there are a lot of people that are eating and ordering. You're not really going to question it as much. Just make sure you're as consistent as possible throughout.
If we use a surfing metaphor, you know, sometimes the waves are low, sometimes the waves are high. But if you're consistent and you're good at
ebbs and flows, that's
surfing.
Business, you know.
But I love uncertainty. I've always been that person. This is one thing that we never had together in our relationship that was similar, and that's how we balance each other out. I've always been the person where it's like, let's go out. And she's like, plans? And I'm like, do we need plans?
We're very yin and yang like that.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess this is a great jump-off point.
Yeah, like
he loves uncertainty.
Yeah, I don't at all.
Yeah,
like my POV is totally different than Halim's POV. So Halim is very entrepreneurial by nature, so he loves this stuff, right? I'm not saying I'm not per se, but like I'm very safe. I like to play safe. I like my comfort zone, so on and so forth. But then at the time when I quit my job, it wasn't because I'm like, I'm going to open a bakery, I'm going to quit my job and like, let's go, you know?
Which is very Hollywood
It's very Hollywood cliche kind of situation. It really was not the case for me. Have I always loved baking? Absolutely. Have I dreamed of owning my own bakery? For sure. But then as I got older and maybe had a little bit more anxiety than like when I was younger, let's say, that dream kind of like started to fade away. But it was always an inkling in me. But then so I quit my job, I was just super burnt out. And then I had some time to think, because my plan was to get another job. It's just I wasn't sure what I wanted to do and I wanted it to fulfill me. And it was around the same time where like I was experimenting with cookie dough recipes, as I mentioned. And my rule always was I'm never going to sell something to a customer if I won't pay money to buy it myself. That was like the one thing that kept going in my mind. And so when I got to that final round, I'm like, oh man, I think I would pay for this, you know? But nothing in me was like, let's launch a business, let's do it. Like that took a lot of push, whether that was from Halim, Sarah, your sister, who really was like, basically like my biggest cheerleader, like do it. Like, and Sarah manages a concept store and they were opening up a cafe at the exact same time that I actually figured out that recipe. And she just put me on the spot and was like, next week we're launching this cafe. You're putting your cookies on display as like giveaways, and that's your way of introducing to customers.
Sarah does have those moments where she'll just kind of push you in because she believes in you.
Absolutely. And so to answer your question on the emotional front, when I first did it, because there's two leaps in this case, right? The first leap was to even just kind of put myself out there, create a brand and put the cookies out there, which was step number one. And because again of my like despise of uncertainty, we played it safe somewhat. So we did it from home, very like small scale. I did my logo on Canva. It was just called Butter at the time. Just like super low key, friends and family kind of a venture. So that was okay from an emotional standpoint. I did end up getting a job as well, and I was doing those two things, and that was all fine and dandy. But then the second leap, which was way more emotional, to be very honest, and way more scary, and I did struggle initially, was to kind of fully
expand.
Like let's leap
Free
and
fall,
let's leave the home, let's find ourselves a kitchen, let's go on the apps, because sidetrack is Halim and I both used to work at Deliveroo. We were both account managers there. So that helped us a lot because we gained a lot of experience. We know what works and what doesn't in the market, and we know how to use these apps. And the one thing I will say is truly like being on Deliveroo, I knew was my key, because it's like having a shop like in the middle of the road, or are you going to have your shop at the mall? And that's an analogy we would use a lot at Deliveroo. And it really helped me visualize like the importance of having a platform where suddenly like you're in front of like a massive audience, right? So I always knew if I really wanted to test whether butter was going to be a success or not, I had to basically go to the big leagues.
For sure. And
that was way scarier.
And that was way scarier.
Way scarier. Yeah.
I would love to dig a bit more into that fear. But before, I just want to comment on a few things. Well, firstly, like the idea of the mall, it touches on a core idea in perhaps F&B, but maybe business in general, which is like the idea from McDonald's, you know, from the co-founder, but also it's a general knowledge thing that real estate, you know, F&B is real estate. And the Deliveroo is a form of real estate.
Absolutely. It's availability, right? You want to be available to as many customers as possible, as long as possible, as quick as possible. Like all of these things really matter, especially in Dubai. Like this is very much a Dubai thing. Delivery apps, you know, work in Dubai in one way and the rest of the entire world a completely different way.
Is it?
Yeah. So essentially, like it's not everywhere that you go where you're like, at 11 p.m. you're like, I feel like making, you know, pancakes with the blueberries and lemons tomorrow morning, but I don't have the ingredients, and then you literally just within like 15 or 20 minutes they're at your doorstep, right? Yeah. So you have to, as a brand, capitalize on that as long as your brand matches delivery. I'm not talking about, you know, like fine dining restaurants or all of that.
But you gotta be able to surf with that kind of wave.
Absolutely. Yeah. Applications are super important, and I forgot why I even mentioned this in the first place.
Real estate.
Oh, the real estate. Yeah, sorry.
Fine.
Going back
it's
to
about
real
visibility.
estate. Yes, absolutely. And actually, again, that was another analogy we would use at Deliveroo. Like each space on the app is like a real estate game, right? So that's why you have things like, oh, we'll pay a little bit so that we're like in the boosted section. So you're more visible, hence you're paying more rent. Like, you know what I mean? Absolutely.
I love the metaphor with rent. Me, myself, as a user on the apps, whatever apps they are, I have the experience of like, if I'm searching too much for the brand, I'm more tired.
Absolutely.
And so my pleasurable experience is to like browse very briefly through the real estate in the market and pick where I'm at.
Exactly. And it has to be in your face. It has to be in your face. So whether that's your, like, I don't know, paying a little bit to be in the boosted section, whether you use keywords in your menu and your naming so that, say someone doesn't know about butter, but they feel like having a cookie, they're going to look up cookie, right? Especially if they don't have like a go-to place just yet. And so what you want to make sure is anytime anyone's typing cookie, dessert, bakery, whatever that is, like you have like increase your chances of popping up. Essentially.
Yeah, but I think one thing to add on to that, sorry to
please, no,
say something.
Go ahead.
One thing I wanted to add to that is people eat with their eyes.
Oh, of course.
Anywhere
Absolutely.
you go, anything you order, anything, you're looking at the pictures first, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not the pictures, you see someone's plate pass by and you go like, what's
that's
that?
very important.
Right? And
invest in photography.
It's crazy. we did not realize how expensive this was and how important this was.
Yeah.
But we used to say this a lot to restaurants. Invest. And now we're doing it, but we're like, damn, that's expensive. Yeah. But at the same time, when you go through your phone, you're scrolling, the first thing that pops up when you invest in the right space as well is the cookies or is whatever you're looking for, right? And you're like, okay, now I know what I'm ordering. Now I see that. That looks nice. Consistency.
I totally like relate from just a customer perspective. I was at, I think, Parker's in Riyadh the other day. And just the visual, the way they do presentation.
Yeah.
We're waiting in a queue for
They do
our
a great
table,
job.
and they're just, floating, gliding through with these beautiful plates. And I'm just like, I'm ready to order.
I want to eat. Exactly.
I want to eat.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about independent food company, the holding one, go to Salt in Kite Beach. Go during Christmas time. They always have like amazing
They're
things
very
happening,
seasonal in what they do. They're very visual, as you said. Yeah, but that's more flagship, right?
Yeah.
To stand out
Flagship.
on an application is 10 times harder.
Yeah. I immediately thought of your, I don't know if we'd call it, branding, I guess. If I search butter on Deliveroo or Kareem, the yellow.
Yeah. I have a funny story about that.
Yeah, go for it.
So basically, very like long story short, when I decided like, okay, let's go to the big guys, essentially, I knew for a fact that I know the market really well, and Dubai is very competitive. There's a piece of the pie for everyone, but you really don't know what's going to end up happening, right? You can do everything right, and for some reason it just doesn't work. So I knew that I needed to potentially go into some sort of partnership. Like I wasn't just going to be like, here we go, let's like build this entire shop and like go all out in all of this. It's just that is not me at all. It was already not me to do this, but that's really, really not me. So thankfully, when I was an account manager at Deliveroo, I used to be the account manager of Couqley, which is an incredible French bistro, really yummy. Their steak fries.
Yeah.
And I grew really close to them as people. We developed such a nice friendship that transcended like my time at Deliveroo. So when I decided to take that next step, I literally just, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I was like, would you want to be partners with me in this venture? Because I knew for a fact that, you know, other than obviously being in a partnership, and that's maybe a little bit more, you know, financially sane, let's just say, at the same time, I knew I could rely on their expertise because they're just so good at what they do. So Rawan and Ziad, the power couple behind.
And they trusted you. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of things happening here, you know. I see it, first of all, as an interesting, if we look at your experience and your journey into butter as a recipe and the product or the result as like the thing coming out of the oven. I see lots of different ingredients coming in that we can talk about. But one of them that now you're talking about for me is like the same thing that you introduced, that's the balance of your characters, the entrepreneurial, and I don't know what we could label it. We can maybe figure this out together, but like you're cautious, you're
very
you're
cautious.
A thinker.
Yeah.
You're you care, you meticulous.
Yeah.
I feel like that's, and the fact that you were blessed to have that Couqley experience, the Deliveroo experience, first of all, led to the journey of butter.
Right.
With the balance of the entrepreneurial side, the people pushing you, the people who can think on a strategy level, or who can support, you know, these things, was really like key. All these ingredients were key to coming together.
100%.
And I think that if not consciously, like Rawan and Ziad could sense that you guys like are going in that direction. You guys are really can make this happen, and they believed in you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's a testament to both of our trust in each other, right? And at the same time, so going back to the yellow, so when they were thankfully on board. And then I was like, okay, great. Like we can just start with an MVP. You know, we can just use the same boxes I'm using now, same everything. It's fine. We don't have to like think too much about it, and we'll launch on Deliveroo. Yeah. And they were like, no,
we ain't doing no MVP.
That is not how it works in Dubai. It's already super competitive. It's mega saturated. I mean, you blink your eyes and another cookie concept is launching,
which has happened, by the way, ever since we launched.
So how are you like you need to do an entire exercise. What is your branding? How are you going to stand out? All of these things. And I remember that day was going to be the first day I go into like driving school training. So like the anxiety was
driving school and butter and
all of that at the same time. Yeah. But I was like, you know what? They're the experts. Like, okay. And then when we did the branding exercise, the designer, who's incredibly talented, but at the time, mind you, like I was just super attached to what once was. And so when I saw the yellow, I'm like, oh, like, I don't know. I think I was just super overwhelmed.
Oh, what once was. I forgot about what once was.
Yeah, remember it was like that greenish.
The teal.
It was teal.
The teal.
Light teal.
Yeah.
Pastel teal. Yes.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And I was, I liked it. I loved the branding so much from day one, but definitely it was like whoa, like that's not what I was, let's say, thinking about. And obviously the reason why the designer chose the yellow was because of butter, right? And it's truly butter represents. Did you just figure that out?
Totally.
That's so funny.
Totally.
It is. It's like a Pantone. Is that the word? Pantone.
What's a Pantone?
Like the
color tone?
like the color.
The color tone, I think.
The color tone. Yeah. I think maybe I'm butchering the
color
name.
tone?
Could be. I'll Google that and let us know.
Pantone. But anyways,
But I think so.
That's why, because it really is at the core of my product, and there's so much that goes into just the butter before we even get to the rest of the dough.
That's so obvious.
Yeah.
How could I miss that? I was just like, yellow pops.
Yeah.
Yellow makes my eyes go, oh.
Yeah, but that was the intention behind it. But then for me, I was like, whoa, that like it's a pop of color. And I was like, at the time, maybe wanting something a little bit more like, let's say, aesthetic and whatever. And she was honestly she made a lot of sense where she was like, your brand is only delivery, right? So like you need to stand out. It needs to pop. It needs to be memorable. If you're just gonna be like everyone else, you're most
She really
likely not
pushed
gonna
for
They'll
it.
keep
do that.
scrolling.
She really pushed for it, honestly.
Yeah, I was
we were
like, remember,
hesitant
I was so emotional as well about it. Like,
I remember we're having coffee in the garden and we were talking about it. We're scrolling through all the boxes that she's done. We're like, I'm not sure. Maybe we can do further in the number 2. And then,
yeah,
you know,
Oh,
then
the
we-
tone book, yeah. Like, isn't it? Like, number
she sends
2,
like
you
4
said.
different
yeah,
options.
kinda if you
Oh,
want.
yeah.
But ultimately speaking,
Completely different options, huh?
this is also other than obviously Halim being like the yin to my yang or the yang to my
Yeah.
yin. Something that I really appreciate in Rowan, who is like the creative powerhouse, let's just say, is that she'll push me, but in so the right way, if that makes sense. So at this point, she knows me through and through, and she knows when to, like, let's say, assuage my anxiety.
Ooh. Choice
But-
word.
SAT.
I-
But it just came up, and that's the correct term.
Big
So
words,
like-
Asma.
You know?
Big words.
So, like, soothe, kind of?
Yeah, like soothe it. And she knows when to be like, listen, girl, trust the process. And in this case, I'm really glad she was like, you know what, Asma? No, we're gonna go with this. Trust me, like it's gonna. And then I just obviously now I'm in love. But
Oh,
just keeping
she's
it
super
real.
creative,
I
by the
love
way.
the story
Like-
of the color.
She's
Yeah.
super creative,
She's
Rowan.
so
Like,
she's so
I don't
creative.
bother when I sit with them sometimes and I'm just watching. I would say a word, she's like, what'd you say? And I'm like, let's just forget what I said.
Yeah.
You know, like
You
literally.
keep doing you, you know?
I feel I'm just super blessed. I'm super grateful. Like she's super creative. Ziad is like way more on like the business side. So thankfully I'm in a
I don't know if this
I'm
is
in
an
a
appropriate
really
question,
good
but do you
spot.
guys see yourselves as like, they're you, but in like 10 years?
Yeah, honestly, we talk
In,
about
like,
it,
10
and
years.
but we've never mentioned it to them.
No, we haven't.
But yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I mean, the way you just described yourselves and them.
Absolutely.
Very
No,
similar.
100. We've talked about this before, but they're, you know, like it's not always recommended for like a married couple to work with each other, right?
sure, yeah.
But then see, they're such a good case study in the sense where each one has like their own specific role, and they do that, and they complement each other so well. And I feel like hopefully down the line, obviously way in the future, that could be us.
Yeah.
I
We really
like
look up
that.
to them, like the
Yeah.
way they are. So
I like that each one has their own role because
Yeah.
I'm playing with the idea of opening a dessert business.
Hmm.
Yeah, I haven't told you guys.
Are you?
interesting.
I know. I don't want to
Actually,
say. I don't want to say anything more than that now.
Okay.
Okay.
We're putting it out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm putting it out there.
Yeah.
Not competitor. Don't worry.
No, that's fine. I know you
No, I'm
wouldn't.
kidding.
We need more desserts in the world.
Yeah, we do.
That's my belief. And you
Uh,
can bake.
And it's
The experience we just had aside, you can bake some pretty
I mean,
good
I've made
stuff.
some good peanut butter
Yeah,
cookies.
you have. You
I
have.
did tell them about it, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
while you were
Yes.
baking.
Nice. I appreciate that.
Okay,
I
so
hope you said good things.
I mean, until we got to the duck fat.
Oh, you
so-
talked about the duck fat?
you
Of course I
talked
talked
about
about the duck fat.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean,
fair enough.
I kept telling Asma initially that if you're gonna create cookies that are better than Homer's, you can launch. And then you made those duck fat, and I'm like, that's it. Everything else is better. No, I'm kidding.
you're
I was,
welcome,
I was
I guess.
comparing to the good stuff.
Yeah, you know. Oh, for sure.
Okay, but you
Yeah.
were saying.
What were we saying?
That
So you were
wanna
saying you
launch a
want to
brand.
launch a dessert
Oh yeah,
brand.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so I was just gonna comment on the fact that I'm exploring launching it with family.
Okay.
So yeah, if I have my cautious side because my personality, we have similar
Yeah.
traits in that. I'm cautious, so I just noticed these little things in our conversation about the idea that make me wonder about this phenomenon of like working with family. When is it possible? Where is it possible? And I like a lot what you said. First of all, you guys have been operating for what, a year?
Mhm.
Or is it as an
Almost.
So
official?
from home, I want to say 2 years,
years,
but then officially
Since March.
7 to 8 months,
Yeah,
somewhere
somewhere.
around there. Yeah.
And things are, in terms of collaboration at least, super smooth.
Yeah. Of course, I mean, there's always going to be like ups and downs and bumps on the road, right?
Right.
We never
But
have
for
those.
the
What are you
most
talking about?
part, yeah. In the grand scheme of things,
Yeah, no, I know
It's
you love
very
to keep it real,
possible.
and I love your honesty.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, hey, the grand
it's
scheme.
been working. Let's just say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it has. It's
your-
possible.
Your reflection here is like, exactly, it's
Yes.
possible.
Yes.
which is cool.
Of course, the main idea, and I think that you guys would have zero issues in doing that, is setting boundaries.
Yeah.
So like sometimes, because like then it becomes impossible to talk about anything other than work, and we have to work really hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes, literally, even me, who's like mainly the brand, I'm like, Halim, I don't want to talk about butter right now.
Yeah.
You know, so
You're
that's
you need to disconnect.
absolutely
You get to a point where it's 11 p.m. and we're talking about
we're following
that
the
cookie or that,
which is totally fine,
Yeah.
right? Ultimately speaking, this is your brand. You want to give it your all, but if it, from a relationship standpoint, it's
Yeah.
important to also talk about
There are
something
other
else.
areas in life. Yeah.
So then that's one, and then two is assigning roles. Like it can't be just like everyone does everything, because that's where usually most of the problems come out.
I agree.
So you basically tally your skills, and each one does what they do best, essentially.
So you're not in each other's areas. You each have
Absolutely.
your space.
Of course, there's like
Competition.
you can ask for advice, or they can ask for advice, and you can weigh in and all of that. But for the most part, you assign roles, basically.
And it's even like just synergistic in terms of
Exactly.
doing
It's the
everything, you're
best
not
use of
tired.
your time, right?
Yeah.
But
Okay.
how fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, same. I'm curious to hear more about this.
Yeah, sure.
Like,
Woohoo.
I'll tell you later.
not on video, huh?
Yeah, it's still in the.
Not yet.
It's still cooking. Well,
It's still baking.
so to speak.
Ooh.
And I know this, but I don't know necessarily the specifics. But I know that when you were in your beta testing phase, you were operating on a standard basic oven, and when you transitioned, or when you began to transition out of your beta testing phase, you went to an industrial or commercial oven.
Yeah.
That chapter must have been interesting from different ways. I used the word teething issues, I remember, and I forgot why it's called teething. You can tell me that again. What was that like? And what was maybe one of the most, or some very like challenging technical obstacles along the way of like perfecting the process?
Let me just start off with, I saw a lot of tears those months.
Yeah.
So let's start with teething issues. Essentially, like when a baby starts teething, it's when the teeth are starting to come out and basically grow, right? And usually that's super painful for babies.
Ooh.
So hence the name teething issues, because you're just starting out and then some things are going to come up that you're having to resolve, but they're very painful
And natural.
until they're resolved. And it's natural. It's always going to happen. You can plan as much as you want. It's not going to go according to plan to that extent. Obviously, there's things that you need to plan, financial, whatever that is, but you can't write on paper exactly what's going to happen. So the beta testing phase, right? So other than obviously scaling your recipe, which is a whole different ball game, the baking in the oven is just as important, right? Because it completely impacts your end product. So when we were doing it from home, we had our own home oven and I got used to it and like the setting and all of that. Then I moved to the industrial kitchen.
Plus, it was a lot less work, right? Like
Obviously,
it was a lot easier.
the scale was much smaller. The stakes were way like not as high.
Plus, you could also plan ahead. You could go like, okay, customer sends an order through. I'll send it in 3 hours. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Or I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Here
but
it's
in
like
this
now.
in this case, we're talking more about like the end product itself, like oven to oven comparison, right? So the thing with industrial ovens is like some may like stay at the exact same temperature, but some ovens are just warmer at that temperature than others. Don't ask me why.
Could be even the metal.
It's very tricky. So many different things. What kind of settings does it have? So typically, as I mentioned, while you're silent baking, was like there's a setting, convection setting usually is what's recommended for cookies because it allows for proper air circulation where you get the like crunch from the outside evenly and the gooey from the inside if that's the kind of cookie you're trying to go for, right?
And that is not the setting that I use.
No, not
absolutely
at all.
not.
So it's kind of...
It really can impact the end product. Oven to oven is super different. So that process was terrible. It was just not like either it would like spread like, and not just the oven, it's the pans as well. Like what kind of pans are we going to use? What kind of baking paper are we going to use? Are we going to use baking paper or the silicone mats or this pan or that pan? We tested so many, either spreading too much, not spreading enough.
Puffing,
Like not being gooey, like just
You have to reinvent from scratch kind of the process that allows it for it to get to the cookie.
Absolutely.
And the pain is like,
Absolutely.
just to reflect, like the pain is like, I know my cookie.
Yes, exactly.
I want it. It's yummy. I can't change it. If I can't change it,
No, that was the cookie that convinced me to do this in the first place. So how am I, unless it's better, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Of course.
You know what I mean? So that was really painful. I'm not going to lie. Just to get to the point where we're like, okay, like this works, you know, because at the end of the day, like with cookies, it's really, of course, the flavor is important, but the texture is like above and beyond, right? Like you want, it's very specific what people look for in a cookie. And so that was definitely like
crispy outside, soft inside is anyway. I think a lot of people love it, but it's difficult to master and standardize across 800 cookies.
Absolutely, for sure. And also don't forget that we went from like a big cookie to a smaller cookie. And that makes a massive difference. How long it spends in the oven, how many you can fit in one pan. Even if you can fit 100 in one pan, doesn't mean you should, because again, it's going to impact the air circulation and how the cookies will bake. Baking is painful and it's a science to a T. And cookies are way more high maintenance than anyone can imagine. But they're great, and I love them, obviously.
Even storing cookies, yeah? Like we never
yeah,
used
the
to store
storing,
cookies.
so the baking itself and then the storing and the scaling and all of that, those are completely different monsters.
Tell us
It takes
a bit
time.
about
It just
storing.
all takes time, I would say, because like when you would freeze it back at home, okay, you put it in the fridge, we would never freeze at home because we bake, we sell, out it goes, right? Here, we have to freeze the dough, obviously, not the ready product. So you got to freeze the dough, but you also got to let it rest in the fridge before you put it in the freezer. And you got to follow as well, that all affects the texture, it all affects the way it rises, there's just so many things.
So many things that go into
And
it.
it was just obviously a lot that we tried to figure out, and then it starts clicking here, it clicks there, it clicks there.
Because even
like,
when you're like baking in the oven, right? When we're doing that testing, was the dough too frozen, not frozen enough? Did it come out from the fridge? Was it like too shaped like a perfect sphere? Was it flattened? Did it have rough edges? Like,
do you roll them into balls and just leave them?
So I personally don't do that. The thing is, like, when things can get sometimes really busy, but in like a certain time span. Okay, so for example, like from 8 to 9 p.m., that's like not so, right? And we sell our cookies by the dozen. Sometimes we'll have to bake again. We try to bake a couple of times throughout the day so that you're still getting like the freshest product possible. But then there are times where someone's going to order like 2-3 boxes of our 36 cookies and like, okay, well, we have to bake. If I were to make them into balls and I'm going to like obviously line them up, by the time I'm just lifting the pan to take it to the oven, they're like swirling around the pan. So it's not recommended to actually shape them like that. If you want to do like a perfect sphere, I always recommend to flatten the bottom so that at least when you're placing them, you're not facing that issue. But I like rough edges. It's artisanal, right? That's the whole point. I don't want them to look mega perfect. Obviously, I want there to be some sort of cohesiveness in the product, but then...
So how do you take it from the bowl to, obviously you measure it, and then...
We form it into some sort of ball, you know,
with your hands.
But obviously. But then we're not doing that like motion. And it makes a difference. It really does.
But it is also better that we don't bake too much, right?
Sorry, what?
It is also important that you don't bake straight away to order, because cookies, as you saw, like when we were done, you can't just lift it.
No.
It's gonna fall.
There's a resting period.
Yeah, you got to leave it to rest, and when you're delivering, there's no time for rest. So we try and always do very tiny batches. We keep them on the side, but then whenever it's sent out hot, well, we couldn't leave it to rest. Some customers like it that way. Some customers like it the other way. But we try and keep it as consistent as possible, as much as we can, and leave it to rest. That's the best.
Leave it to rest, because then it sets in the shape that it should be.
Yeah, and the texture itself, right?
Yeah.
Like when like cookies will definitely set within like maximum 10 minutes, but it's important to let that happen, because that's also what contributes to that like really crunchy exterior. If you're taking a cookie that's piping hot and you're putting it in the packaging, it's going to condense and it's not going to...
oxygen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a different case though for like your big warm cookie that you're getting. That's different, right? Because you want that to melt in your mouth. Whereas,
gooiness is more part of the bigger
right.
cookie.
Whereas for us, we still want it to be gooey, but not to the point where it's like melted into the packaging.
That's why
Especially
we
in the way
created
we
the skillet.
package our cookies. The skillet, but then soon I'm excited about what we're introducing soon. I'm not gonna say,
Don't
but
talk about it. No.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I'll
We
just keep it
can
there.
leave it as a teaser.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a quick break. I'm going to go glaze the cookies
Okay.
and come back.
Okay. So
Be
definitely.
brutally, يعني, it looks really ugly. Let's start with that.
يعني it's definitely like a cross between cake and bread, which is what we predicted.
In the shape of a cookie. In the shape
It's
of...
definitely.
Wait, can we see what it was supposed to look like?
Yeah, by the way.
Yeah? Sure.
So that's how thick it is. All right. I don't know if you can see how bready this looks like.
Definitely, as I predicted, it tastes amazing.
But like cake.
But it's cake.
So wait, maybe one thing to start off with is mine was a lot drier. And when I say drier, I mean it actually tasted like bread. And I was enjoying it, but I was not enjoying it as much as these two. And then we paused, and then Asma went back to the tray, and she got another
I
one.
told you I have a sweet tooth.
She does.
Yeah.
But when I realized that, I'm like, definitely she had a piece much better than mine. Definitely. So I went and had another bite, realized it was really good, and then finished that full piece. So, yeah.
So I surprised a bit.
Yes, you did.
Especially relative to your first impression.
Yeah, my first impression was not as great as the one that you actually saw off camera.
We thought the flavor was gonna be good,
Yeah.
obviously, but we
Texture.
just did not know the texture and how that
The
was
texture
gonna
I ate is what I expected, by the way. That's the funny thing.
be. Yeah, no, it's still like cake,
Yeah,
but it's good.
but mine was more
Who doesn't
bread.
like cake?
You
Oh,
know,
okay.
so it was a bit drier. It wasn't as moist. The one you had was moist, and it was like, oof. Yeah, that was good.
I'm so glad that even though it's not a cookie, technically, I'm so glad that you enjoyed
Yeah.
the flavor.
Very good. Grazie.
I
Grazie.
love your vlog, genuinely,
Okay, thank you.
which is Asma the Baker on TikTok.
No, at. Yeah.
Oh,
I was doing
that's what I
hashtag,
did.
but
Oh,
at Asma the Baker. Thank you. I appreciate it.
For sure. I love how real it is. I love even the voiceover is real, you know, the tone.
Yeah.
It's like, this is me.
It's moi.
It's toi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Firstly, before I ask you, because I want you to talk about it at more length, I want to ask Halim, like, what do you did you ever think that part of Butter was going to have this vlog on TikTok, Asma the Baker at, or did you know, when you see it, what do you feel? Is it a part of Butter for you? Is it an Asma thing? Like,
so you know, like I never really thought about this too much. Like for me, you know me as a person, I'm not the person to post a million posts and stories and videos. And if I do post any videos, they're usually horrible. So I'm not that person, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to Asma, on the other hand, she's always been the person that would, you know, post stories, post videos. She's never been too much and she's never been too little, right? Sometimes it's a little bit on the lower side, but that's it. When it came to Butter, she's always been videoing Butter anyway. So for me, that was already kind of a natural thing that she was doing from the beginning. And then she's created her own profile. So she has both Butter by the Dozen page or Butter DXP, I believe, right?
Butter.dx.
Butter.dxp, and that's on TikTok and on Instagram.
And on Instagram.
But then recently she changed and she added a new one that could just be personally her, right? And that's just pure Asma, and that's all you get. I mean, I watched her do the videos in the beginning. I would be chilling on my side, like on the couch, you know, and then I'd just hear her doing her voiceovers. I'd stare at her, she's like, don't look at me. And I'm like, okay, look
Yeah,
away.
it's like really
that's
like,
so cute.
It's so annoying to like film a voiceover and be very conscious of the fact that someone's like actively listening to you. You know, I'm trying to do this as naturally as possible without sounding too like staged. You know, but then obviously there's like you're like constrained within a certain period of time of the video, and then each like clip has
Shot.
something I need to say, whatever that is, and it already takes time to have this guy literally be filming me and like clearly like zooming in on me while I'm doing this. It's not very helpful,
Yeah,
but
I don't help much. I like to tease. I like to make
Yeah.
fun. And, you know, there are times at the end of the voice, she goes like, okay, bye. And then I'll just be like passing by to the kitchen. I go like, May walk away. I'm not. Yeah,
It's fun.
It's fun. I keep things fun.
Yeah.
I think
Sure.
you put a spin, and Asma
Yeah.
needs to kind of balance.
Yeah,
with it.
yeah.
A little bit, yeah. So, but then now when I see her videos that are her more personal ones,
Yeah.
So I was on a work trip this week, and while I was there, I was just literally like going through TikTok, and I'd be watching them. She doesn't send them to me because I just see them straight away, right? So I'm scrolling through TikTok.
It's nice like that.
Thanks to her,
Spontaneous.
yeah. And then I scroll and I get to her video, and I'm like, oh, cool, video, and it's all about her life, right? And honestly, I sent her a message that day, and I'm like, love the video. I actually made it through the very end, and it was very interesting and good. I might have bias because she's my wife at the end of the day, but like,
Yeah.
I find that interesting.
Best not be scrolling.
But
But
is
yeah.
it a new side of Asma a little bit?
Yeah. She's never been the type to do the voiceover part in the side. It was more like for the brand she was doing it. I mean, she's still doing it for the brand at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it's more of her personal side, right?
So for you, Asma, the thing that was curious for me is like from this angle of the vlog, what behind the scenes, because that's what you're kind of filming a little bit. After this, I would say it's like a journaling experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do people not realize outside of like the technical stuff that we kind of already touched on about running a bakery?
So yeah, basically, as Halim said, we have the butter page, which is very much about the product. But then I decided to do an Asma page because while it's great to post behind the scenes on TikTok with your own business, because people like to see that, I feel like sometimes there's things that are way more personal that I want to share, but it's just not that appropriate to share like on a business page.
It's not conducive to the brand.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I launched Asma the Baker, because then you do get some behind the scenes, but then you also kind of get an understanding of what life could look like if you were to take that same journey, right? And so I think what people might not realize is, and it's going to be very different from one person to the other. And the main difference between each person, actually, there's two main differences. One is obviously what it is that you're doing, but two is your mode of operations, right? So I'm lucky in that I'm in a partnership, right? So, but I have an extremely small team. So I open the bakery every single day. There's not one day where I'm not in that bakery. How long I'm in the bakery depends on the day. So I have 2 days out of the week where I have zero help whatsoever because my team member is off. And then the rest of the week, I come in the morning, I open the bakery, got everything nice and set up until she comes in and takes over. So I guess what I wanted to show and what people might not be aware is everyone says entrepreneurship is difficult and there's some sacrifices that you need to do, so on and so forth. But I think visualizing it is different, right? Because it could look like me spending, 12 plus hours on my own in the kitchen, scrambling, running around. It could look like me trying to remember to answer emails, admin work, all of these things at the same exact time. But I also, need to showcase that in order for me to keep my sanity, there are days, especially if I have help, where I'm prioritizing myself, whether that's going to the gym finally after 7 months, whether that's just kind of like looking like this, because this is not what you're getting. Like we have a joke internally in the kitchen, like I'm basically Adam Sandler when I'm going into the kitchen. Like I'm wearing like the worst outfits. We're getting some sort of like vamp up now with like proper uniform, but so far it's been very Adam Sandler.
Have we ordered those ones?
Yeah.
Really?
I love the
Nice.
the side dig on Adam Sandler.
Yeah, listen, much love, but like, that's the style.
That is the style.
So yeah, it's just showing the balance between both, and you really, really need that. There's never going to be like a perfect balance, but you do what you can with the day that you're given and the resources that you're given, basically. And so that was my end goal with the second page is, of course, showcasing the brand and a lot of behind the scenes behind that, but then also showing what it could look like for someone who isn't your typical entrepreneur. Because I'm not, if you take pen and paper and write down every single quality that an entrepreneur should have, I do have a lot of them and I'm going to give myself credit, but someone that loves their comfort zone, someone that clings to their comfort zone, someone that overthinks, someone that likes to play safe, that's not necessarily in the dictionary, let's just say. But I think we're in a spot today where people are way more vulnerable and open. And I'm showing people that someone that has anxiety and struggles with it can be an entrepreneur. You just have to kind of like, it's going to be your own journey. You navigate it, you learn, there's ups and downs. And I want to showcase all of that and keep it super real and entertaining, hopefully.
By the way, I really liked the point you said, do what you can. Do what you can with the day that you're given.
Yeah, exactly.
And the resources you're given.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like there's no I go into absolutely I go into Monday and Tuesday knowing I have no help. There's no reason in like, let's say, of course it's tough, but I'm not like, that's it, I'm not dwelling over it. Like, how can I maximize my time? Like, so I'll try to dedicate a lot of my time on Monday and Tuesday to lots of admin work. So I'll do all my kitchen prep, but then in the quiet times from an order standpoint is when I'm like, okay, I'm going to answer my emails. I'm going to approve things, all of that stuff.
I like that Halim stopped on that sentence as well. It struck a chord in my mind, but I couldn't remember the wording. Me too, because I don't know about you, but what stuck in my mind was that she wasn't just talking about the baking part in terms of like resources. It's also, us.
Absolutely.
That we need, for example, an hour at our workouts.
Exactly. Yeah. It just makes me, I think, a better added value to the brand, if that makes sense, right? And also, I think entrepreneurship has this like label that like you have to do everything and like blood, sweat, and tears and all of that. There's a lot of tears, that's for sure, and a lot of sweat and all of that stuff. But at the
same,
bit of
blood too, huh?
Little bit of blood that happens. That happens, especially if you're working in a kitchen. Yeah. But in the grand scheme of things, I think. Use your resources, ask for help, like do it, especially in Dubai. You'd be surprised that people are really ready to help you out, but you just have to ask. Yeah. And eventually, if the business grows in the way that it's supposed to, then you'll have access to more resources and your life shifts like that. Our first month when we launched, we had zero help, which means I basically spent 24/7 in the kitchen, and he has a full-time job, so he would just come in on the weekends. So you can only imagine what that was like. Yeah. For me, it was good because I got to learn everything through and through, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. But the moment we saw the potential in the brand, and thankfully to everyone, like all the customers that loved their orders, like we were like so like incredibly positively surprised, essentially. And that allowed us to hire our first person. The moment that happened, my lifestyle changed. And I'm pretty sure now we actually hired our second person, which is incredible.
Congrats.
Thank you. So now my lifestyle is going to shift even more. And so it's phases and it ebbs and flows, but you can do it.
And you're documenting it.
I'm documenting it, yeah. And it's also like, as you said, like a journal, because I'd love to look back a year from now and see all of the ups and the downs, even right now, because I was vlogging as well when I first officially launched a couple of months ago. And I'm like, oh man, you have no idea. You have no clue. I even have like that first day leaving the house and actually, khalas, I'm about to operate. No clue.
You have no idea what you're about to go through.
No clue.
But by the way, like I was telling her, I was flying this week to Amsterdam, right? And on my phone, my wallpaper is, get rid of the parking one. Whatever. There's a picture of me and Asma, right? So I had my phone on my lap. The hostess passed by and she was asking me if I need blah, blah, blah. And then she goes like, I know her. I'm like, you know her? She's like, yeah. I'm like, where do you know her from? And she goes like, I think TikTok.
No
like,
way.
Yeah. I'm like, and it's happened to me a few times as well, right?
Incredible.
And she goes like, yeah. I'm like, what? TikTok? I'm like, do you know the cookie brand butter by the dozen? She's like, rings a bell. Like all. I'm like, lol. Even once we went to a restaurant, the staff stopped us and she's like, I know you very well to her.
Yeah, she's like, I know you from TikTok. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like it's pretty fun. It's wild, right? Because like right now, my TikTok page is very much the beginning of it. Well, I mean, to be fair, that was like when I was doing more on the butter page. But still, yeah, it's really cool. Even just like when I'm like in gatherings or whatever it is, and I introduce myself, I get oh, you're the cookie lady. And I'm like, I like that label, like, sure. I mean, I'd love to be called the cookie lady. I mean, that's such a big
That's compliment. An honor.
It's an honor, absolutely.
I love that.
I'll take it.
For me, I interpret the positive emotion of like that person running into Halim and saying and seeing the phone, recognizing you. I relate that positive emotion to like I like, as me as the fan of, your TikTok. I like when someone opens up and shares something they're really experiencing and encountering. It's a deeply profound process to them. I think they feel that when they see your page. So then when they see you, they're happy to see you because
they
they're
feel
really
like they know me
connected.
maybe to a certain extent as well. I just often, like, I've watched so many podcasts of like entrepreneurs and all of this incredible people, but I found every time, or more often than not, I'd end up feeling super anxious after that podcast, even before I even decided to launch Butter.
Oh, like I'm
It's
gonna
too
be them.
intense. It's too intense. It's and it's like, like I get up at 5 a.m. and then I do my workout and then I do this and then do that. And I'm like, I don't know, like it's not very fair, right? Because I'm pretty sure there could be a lot of people that are more like me that have incredible ideas that shy away from them because they don't fit the bill, And I'm here to show that.
My worst are listening to those guys that go like, you got 2 hours. In those 2 hours, you break it down. Or you got 24 hours in a day, but that 24 hours is nothing. You break it down, and then you have that much time. And it's like, guys, just stop, please.
Yeah, it's too much. I mean,
Not
to
everyone
each,
has to be that way.
and to each their own, right? Whatever works for you, but they almost say that whatever they say is like, you have to take it as it is. And I just don't think that's the case.
And if you don't apply it, you're a failure, and
Right.
you'll never get to it.
Exactly.
You got to wake up every day at 5 a.m. in the morning, go for a run, stare at the sunshine, and then do some yoga right after that, right? Like, success.
Mind you, I mean, doing yoga and being in the sun is super helpful, but it doesn't mean that like
You have to fit that recipe.
that's how you
that's
achieve
one of the
success.
books from Robin Sharma, right? The 5 a.m. Club. So he talks about waking up at 5. At least he does not stress about you wake up at 5 a.m. He's like, you can wake up anytime you want. The idea behind 5 a.m. is that you're not really involved with speaking to people.
You're not stimulated.
And I like that. I personally like the idea. I tried it for like a couple of months at the time when I told you back then. It was nice, but it was also tiring, right?
Unrealistic.
It's unrealistic because
not sustainable.
It's not, because at the end of the day, you want to sleep
depends on the
later.
person, obviously. Some people it works for them, right? You just
talking
have to
about
find
your
what works
I have to
for
sleep
you.
at 10.
Yeah.
And sleep at 10, which means I lose my life in the weekend. Right? And then if I lose my life in the weekend, or if at least I choose to do it Monday to Friday, I'm very inconsistent in my weekends, mess up my whole sleep cycle, and back to normal again, right? So
it's hard to maintain consistently, which makes it an unrealistic habit to adopt.
But what I like about it is the fact that you're waking up, no one's there, not looking at your phone this whole time. You decide if you want to do a workout of 20 minutes, you want to do a yoga for 20 minutes, or you want to do meditation for 20 minutes. That's it, right? So it's as simple as that. Was it yoga, meditation? So it was meditation, it was workout, and then there was another 20 minutes. I'm not really remembering what it was, but more or less in the same idea, right? Learning something. That's what it was.
You can learn something.
Yeah.
That's what he says.
That's very intimidating.
It's very intimidating. It's a lot, right? So like what I would do that time is I would do 20 minutes of meditation in the beginning because I just woke up, I was taking my time. And then I would do a workout. And then after that, I would actually, go through my day just like as a plan. Let me plan my day out. Let me learn something quickly and read something. Done.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it's tiring.
I like what you said that you paused on. He didn't stress the hour. He more stressed the idea of disconnection.
Yeah. The idea of having your first waking hour to be just for you. And I think that's achievable. How you choose to spend that hour is up to you.
You put your phone aside, etc.
Exactly, but it's important. I haven't been very good at doing that, but it is super important. I also wanted to just say one thing, just to kind of not forget. As much as I was promoting the fact that each entrepreneurial journey is different to the other, I just have to obviously stress on the fact that it is hard work at the end of the day. The thing is I feel like people shy away from it. They're either super for it or super against it. It is hard work, and if you're not willing to work hard, don't do it because it's hard, But it's worth it. And once you have access to certain resources, use them smartly so that the blood, sweat, and tears maybe go from a bucket to a quarter cup, You know what I mean?
And keep in mind, it takes time, right?
It takes time. It's a slow burn. Not instant gratification.
Zero, yeah.
You have to be like available all the time. By the way, like fun fact is
it's like a baby.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Literally.
I have my number on everything: social media, Deliveroo, the driver. So like I can't sleep before we close ever, because if we get a call from a customer or a driver, like I have to be available. You know what I mean?
Because it's your baby.
Absolutely. So and that's totally fine. It's part of the process, and you accept that. However, that doesn't mean that like, you know, khalas, lifeless and don't enjoy anything and focus, and you won't sleep for 20 years and then you'll taste the sweet taste of retirement. Like that, I completely disagree with.
That extreme
there's somewhere in the middle. But the work hard is a cross. It's your brand, right?
And you have to be involved, right? To understand, build credibility and so on. Right? Like you won't be able to get a staff member come in and go like, yeah, just start. Nah.
You have to care. You have to care. You have to care.
You have to onboard them from a place of caring, from a place of actually knowing how to run the business.
Yeah.
And also, sorry, one last thing is because
I've
always.
Contrary, you're actually answering something that I wanted to ask about, which is like what would you tell someone who's kind of thinking about committing? Now I just realized as though I'm asking you advice about my situation.
Okay.
Which kind of, I guess it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
Thinking about committing, hesitant, and I would just share like some things that I've heard is the ideal that people set out for what a business mindset should be isn't one size fits all.
Right.
Yes, there is hard work involved, and it's better to rip that Band-Aid off from the beginning.
Yeah.
You're gonna work hard.
Right.
Best. There is a life. There is an importance even to prioritizing yourself.
Right.
It's just maybe the way you kind of described it. That, for example, you stopped gym for a while. Now you're starting. Like, you might have to reshuffle your priorities to match the
depending
business.
on the season. Let's just say.
Depending on the season.
Yeah.
That's what comes to mind.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, since we're already kind of discussing this, that you would reflection on the process maybe as well? I think that gave you some, I observe, I mean, obviously it's up to you, but I observe that gave you some confidence, just the vlog itself.
Oh, for sure.
Because you're like, that's me.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. So I was going to say that it wasn't like I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. What should I do? It was quite literally the other way around, where I'm like, I think this cookie, like, people would love, and I would buy it as a customer, like, let me go for it. And then I became an entrepreneur, if that makes sense.
I love that. Because your cookies are a value.
Exactly. And it wasn't like I'm like, okay, now I need to come up with an idea because I want to be an entrepreneur. In my opinion, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that are like that, and that's totally fine. But that's not going to work for me specifically because of the fact that I'm a nervous character by nature. And so
you need this to drive you.
Absolutely. I believe so much in the product. It's driving me all the way through because I know that it's the best cookie that you can get in Dubai, and I'm going to own it because it's my brand, right? And I genuinely believe that. There are other cookie brands that are incredible, but again.
That's perhaps why you felt all these complicated emotions in the teething issues chapter, because you're so attached.
For sure. I'm so absolutely. I'm so attached to what it should be that I cannot sell what it is, you know what I mean? But what it was in that moment. Of course, every time you scale, like, things change and you have to adapt. But at the end of the day, what keeps people coming back is going to be the product. You can do all the branding you want, all the marketing you want, everything, right? But then if you don't have return customers, that's your biggest asset. If they're not coming back, the supply will, dry off at some point.
So I mean, another advice would be like, love your product.
Be obsessed with your product. Don't shy away from promoting your product wherever you are. Make sure that you know why your product is so good and can objectively explain it. Like, I was told initially that I would explain it from an emotional standpoint, which is totally fine. But at the end of the day, those are the reasons why, like, let's say I love it, me. But then when you're in business, your customer is the most important thing. So why are they gonna love it? Why are they gonna order it? And if you can't get that, think about what could make them order it. So for example, yes, I thought my product was amazing, but then, you know, when you think about the market as a whole, you have to start asking yourself, what are the things that are going to push the customer to click the checkout button? And that could be pricing, it could be the pictures, it could be the branding, it could be the flavors, so many different things, right? So going back to your question, I think was advice for entrepreneurs. First of all, I'll definitely be obsessed with the product. Listen, a lot of the times you hear the advice, you need to like be solving a problem out there. Again, this is my personal opinion. Of course, like ideally you're solving for something because you need to add value in order for people to recognize your brand and buying it. So maybe mine was twofold, right? One is like a cookie that's not going to make you jitter and like not be able to sleep. But also the size allows you to enjoy a few now, a few tomorrow, so on. Or when you're in a gathering, first of all, it's a beautiful box. So you feel proud coming into the house with like that box. And also it's like super easy for everyone to enjoy without having to worry about like breaking it and all of that stuff, right? So that is a problem that I'm solving, but it's not necessarily always that black and white, and that's okay. If you believe in your product, eventually all you need to do is just put yourself in the customer's shoes, really, and not emotionally, and ask yourself, if today I saw, even if it's not anything to do with F&B, if it's a product or whatever it is, if I'm on Amazon, what's going to make me buy this? Am I going to buy this? You have to do that exercise.
Problem-centric has a negative connotation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, you can be technically solving for all the stuff you said, also the complexity of the taste,
right.
all the stuff we said in the beginning, dough, chocolate, salt. But in this case, there is another angle to look at, like incepting a business can be, I want this out there.
Yeah.
I believe people will enjoy this.
Yeah. So what can I do to this product to make it desirable, essentially? You know what I mean? So that's for sure another thing. My biggest advice as well, and everyone knows this at this point, create an opinion committee. Create an opinion committee. I cannot stress this enough. What I mean by this is naturally, whenever you, like, again, want to start your own venture, you're going to rely on your friends and family for advice, right? What do you think about the logo? What do you think about the color? What do you think about the product? What do you think about this price? What do you think about this packaging? There's so many decisions you're going to have to make, and you're naturally going to want to like ask everybody, because in your mind you're like, that's a
total
sample
mess.
Yeah, and it's a sample size of like what your customer base may look like, right? But avoid doing that. My recommendation, and you're gonna get overwhelmed, you're gonna get pulled in so many different directions.
What's the difference between that and an opinion committee?
So an opinion committee is limited. We don't open a WhatsApp group and send to like 500 people, what do you think? Because I did do that, okay? And I learned it the hard way. Don't do that, right? I would say however many you're comfortable with, but no more than 5. And choose people with different profiles, because they're gonna give you different elements that ultimately contribute to like a more whole product once you put it in the market. So for example, the business savvy friend, the creative friend, especially if a friend works in an industry that, like, you know, where your product belongs to, let's just say, that's a great one. Someone you just trust that has your best interest at heart, no matter what, unconditional, so on and so forth. Even, for example, a friend with a higher spending power, a friend with a lower spending power, who's your audience, so on, but limit them, and you rely on these guys for advice, period. Because the moment you go and you ask everyone, you're never going to be able to make a decision. It's so overwhelming, and you might end up
many opinions too, huh?
Yeah, and you might end up not making the best decision for yourself. You might end up going on a tangent. You might delay your launch because you're like, oh man, like, what if this person is right? What if this?
Yeah. You need a few flavors that are different than your own.
Exactly.
To just balance your emotionality and your attachment to the brand.
Absolutely. And also, you know, at the end of the day, this is your product, and you need to be super convinced. So whatever anyone tells you, take it with a grain of salt. Always take it with a grain of salt. It's also a gut thing, right?
That's a tagline for butter as well. Or exactly.
Yeah, the salt gist. It's a gut thing too. Follow your gut, and you should be good to go. But don't ask.
Yeah, I think we've got quite a well-rounded advice.
Yeah.
I would end it end today with the last question.
Mm-hmm.
This is one that personally matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I, as you guys know, lost some weight, quite a bit of weight last year. And part of that for me, but it might not be for others, because weight gain and food comes from different reasons. But for me, definitely a big part of it was like mental health. You know,
Yeah.
I was eating a lot for emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And the work that I did with my coach, Kat, is like figuring that out, pinpointing when I'm doing that, and interrupting that process, introducing something new that's not food. And on top of that, very important foundational layer, it was like food work. So now I'm just asking you guys as like Halim and Asma, not founders of Butter by the Dozen, like what in your opinion is the relationship between food and mental health in your lives or just in general? I would just add a little detail from my side. Like I noticed that it fluctuates.
Okay.
Like last year, it was easier for me to consistently not eat out of emotions for a long time. This year now with shifted, moved to Riyadh, in the office.
Lots of changes.
Lots of changes. My whole routine changed. My flexibility, my free time, much more stimulation every single day. So I noticed more emotions. What's the word? Kind of clouding or overwhelming me. So the appeal to eat a little bit more out of emotions, whether it's like eating in a meal more or grabbing like a protein bar when I'm not hungry, is there. And it just, I've been reflecting about that.
Okay.
I've been thinking about that. And I was like, it's interesting that it happened when I moved to Riyadh. I feel there's a connection. I feel I need to get used to Riyadh while also sticking to my values and accept a bit of wobbliness in this period and not be too hard on myself. But yeah, this is kind of some detail to get you inspired to, you know, on this topic. Like,
I think you start.
Okay. It's a good question. So look, I think for me in general, I'm not an emotional eater
I was gonna say that.
at all, right? So this
Yeah.
is one thing both Asma and I have in common. Not in common,
Yeah.
sorry. Complete opposites in that
Not
sense.
in common.
When we first met, I never had snacks in my house. I used to weigh my food back then. I used to go to the gym nonstop. Like,
He was very systematic about it.
yeah, I was very systematic. I'm like, I eat this amount of protein after this workout, I gain this much muscle. That was my mindset, right? Math. But I've also been a food lover for the longest time.
you have your
As you know.
dance, the famous Halim dance.
I have my
with
famous
food.
dance, if I enjoy it, right? With the little hums that go there. So,
Little humps.
so I enjoy good food, right? And
Yeah.
I know that when I enjoy good food, I'm eating it only in that specific time, right? So let's be real, I'm not going to have the best meal every single day, but I also know I'm going to have lunch and dinner. I usually skip breakfast because it just wastes my time, and going back to the old, like, you know, podcast, waste your time. No, but actually, like, I don't enjoy having breakfast that much because I find it wastes my day and it makes me hungry throughout, and then I can't eat between like 12 to 2 o'clock, let's say, right? So I'll have my first meal around 12, pretty much just a normal meal. When it comes to lunch during work hours, I make sure it's something very easy to consume, not too heavy. If you end up eating something too heavy, you end up feeling sleepy. So I do listen to my body as well. Have something on the lighter side, have a coffee right after, I'm good to go. Weekends, well, I enjoy my meals there, right? So this is where I go like, okay, I want to have a barbecue, protein, you know, like marinated chicken or meat or whatever it is. Having a ragu that's slow cooked for a while, like, you know, these kind of things I get excited about, especially when I have the time.
Yeah, there's a love for food there. It's
There's a
not
love for
about
food, yeah.
anything related to emotions. For you, I don't necessarily see a link between food
No.
and mental health.
I
Even
don't.
any link, yeah.
That's the thing. So it's very hard for me to give.
Yeah,
your
I mean,
positive mental health
exactly.
when you eat nice food.
Yeah,
you so-
he
feel
gets
good.
excited about
dance, yeah.
the occasion,
Exactly.
but it's not interfering emotionally at all.
Like, I know we're going for pizza now. I'm very excited. So I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm not going to eat that much, as you saw.
Yeah, the cookies.
I
Yeah.
had one cookie or two cookies, and today I barely had any breakfast. or lunch technically. So, and it's not because I don't want to, it's because I'm like, nothing's that interesting, no time, blah, blah, I'll leave it for later. You know, like I don't have that whole 12 to 1 I should eat or 1 to 2 I should eat. Like it's all like if I really want to eat, I'll eat. And
He's
it's
intuitive.
Yeah, I listen to my
Lucky.
body.
Yeah, very lucky.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, a little bit
lucky.
jealous, but
Yeah.
it's okay.
Sorry,
I've
guys.
always been jealous of his eating habits because I'm not like that. Not at all.
I hear you. I feel you.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it real. If I'm stressed, I can't eat. Okay, but if I'm happy, sad, and neutral, all I want to do is eat. And specifically, like as I said, I'm a sweet tooth, so I struggle a lot with that. Okay, listen, I mean, like obviously, I love my cookies, and I wish I could eat them every day, but I'm still not trying to like damage my health. Let's just say, but I do find that it's hard. And maybe eventually I'll be able to achieve that, but it's very hard for me to remain consistent with what is categorically a healthy lifestyle when it comes to food, right? Because I'll be really good for like a week, but then if I'm extremely tired or I'm exhausted or I'm stressed or whatever, literally all I want to do is like order dessert and just devour it. You know what I mean?
And she does that without
I know
telling
what you
me,
mean. Yeah.
It's
And she what?
totally
She does it without telling me. That's the weakness part, huh? That's the
Yeah.
emotional side.
Ooh, I have that as well.
yeah,
For me, these moments happen in the dark when I'm watching TV,
absolutely,
which is very interesting.
absolutely.
It happens.
We hide it.
Yeah.
It's a comfort thing,
It's either
right?
that I'm sitting on the couch just chilling and then I hear the doorbell ring and I'm like, what'd you order? And then I get the, nothing.
Yeah.
Or
It's
I'm out and then she sends me a message and she goes like, by the way, I did something bad today. I'm like, what'd you do?
Yeah, it's very.
It's always food.
It's super like mental health and food, super related. Obviously, if we're talking from an objective standpoint, the cleaner you eat, the better your mental health. If we're talking scientifically or
Yeah.
technically, but for me, from where I stand, food is emotions because you get a birthday cake on your birthday, and you get like bûche de Noël in Christmas, and I don't know, Thanksgiving, you get the turkey and the pumpkin pie and the pecan pie.
Let's go.
So from an emotional standpoint, there's that for me as well, like the celebratory element. But then in the grand scheme of things, like it just makes me happy. So much so that sometimes it's the wrong reason. I don't want to say wrong. Wrong is a harsh word, but it's just... It's not because I'm happy that I'm eating this dessert, even though it does bring me happiness. But then I realized that I did it for another reason, you know? Like if I were consuming desserts in the moments that I'm happy and I want to enjoy it, I'd have a lot less dessert than what I actually do, which is when I'm tired, I'm alone,
Because in general, anyway, happiness is a blessing. It's like true happiness, and it comes
absolutely
in moments.
Yeah.
Come to think of it, I don't like to eat as much when I'm not happy, right?
Yeah, no, I can't.
When I'm not happy and when I'm busy, I don't like to eat.
Just when I'm stressed, I
But when
cannot
I'm
eat.
happy, I enjoy it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's very related.
There's some kind of philosophy at work here. We don't have to dig at it, but no. There's something interesting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I enjoy good food.
Yeah, we love food.
Wow, we do. Halim, Asma, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us. This was so much fun.
Right?
I loved it.
I really enjoyed it as well.
It was also like
Omar.
a trip down memory lane. It was
I know,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
Off the butter journey.
Yeah, good reflection. Love it. Thank you so much. Bye.